This presentation was recorded at the 2015 ANZICS ACCCN Annual Scientific Meeting.
I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, Associate Professor Neil Orford. He is the Director of the ICU at Barwon Health in Geelong. He is also co-founder of the CritIQ or Critique website, depending on which side of the Tasman you reside. And he has done a lot of amazing things so far in his career, and one of the most amazing, I think, is to tame Charlie Cork down in Geelong. And he came and spoke to us about that at the New Fellows Conference very well. He's now moving up to saving the world, and it's saving the world that he's going to talk to you about over the next 8 to 9 minutes. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you. So I'm glad you got everyone else to talk about areas that they were experts in, because clearly I'm not an expert in antivirals. I am an expert in apocalypse, because me and my teenagers have watched all the Walking Dead and every zombie movie ever made. And so let's thank you for introducing references to Michael Jordan, modern media and history, because that's what I'm going to have to rely on to get us through the next 8 minutes. So I'm going to talk about virus versus man, how we're going, vaccines, because if you don't include vaccines and antivirals, you don't have we're not doing so well. Antivirals, and then a quick survival guide to a viral outbreak. So what has history taught us? How are we going? I think the viruses have done pretty well. And some of you, so when you think about viruses, you always think about the most recent epidemics. You might stretch to HIV and hepatitis, but you will think of influenza and all those recent outbreaks. But viruses have been winning the battle for a very long time. Smallpox, in the 1900s, it's estimated that killed 500 million people, 400,000 per annum before it was eradicated in the 26th of October 1977. Our only complete victory. Viral hemorrhagic fevers, which we've all seen a lot of attention to recently with Ebola, but even back in the 1550s in Mexico, 15 million people killed, which is an extraordinary number to think of in any era. Measles, 2.6 million per annum in the 80s, has dropped down to probably still 96,000 per annum. Again, that's a number we would, in flu, would have us in crisis mode. Then we moved to the flu. Spanish flu, as we all remember, killed many, and these numbers are obviously debated because there wasn't a body count back then. Asian flu in the 50s, Hong Kong flu in the 60s, we're still talking millions. HIV, a slower virus, which has led to a lot of the advances we've made. It's estimated somewhere over 30 million people have died since the 60s to now. And then more recently, I think we've done a little bit better with epidemics, knowing that HIV and hepatitis are still just going along. Although we've paid a lot of attention to these influenzas, they've been a little less successful at killing us, even though the numbers bothered us at the time and still do. There are ones that many of us may not have heard of. We all heard about Ebola, but I don't know, hands up about chikungunya, who knows about that? Yeah, a lot. So those of you who, you're all New Zealanders, you know all about it. I'd never heard of it until I was in Fiji this year with an open heart, and there were all the chikungunya patients, and I thought it was what we were having for dinner. But so how are we going? So vaccines, the success story, they're good. They bolster your immune system. They attack the virus before it gets into the cell. There's different types, and we're advancing from attenuated, inactive to subunit vaccines. Great for prevention, not so good if you're infected. And less useful for rapidly mutating virus. They're glamorous because you get to give Brad Pitt an injection and save his life, and that's good. And we did well with some of them. Smallpox, a great victory. Measles, polio, yellow fever. Some herpes vaccines. HIV, we haven't cracked. Flu keeps changing. Ebola, as far as I know, we haven't cracked. What about antivirals? So don't worry, I'm not going to go through the whole slide. This is when I immediately regretted the topic, when I had to start reading about antivirals, because it's a huge field. And most of our successes have been HIV, herpes, and hepatitis. They range from everything from inhibiting cell entry to changing viral replication to translation to gene integration into our genome to the more recent immunomodulators. And the real successes we all know, and a lot of this success, all of this has been driven by HIV, as our understanding of the human and the viral genome has improved immensely in the last 20 years. For those of you who are male baby boomers, you're probably quite aware of the hepatitis C vaccine, antivirals, because mistakes you made in your youth. Now you've got hepatitis C and cirrhosis, and there's some really interesting stuff going on about the triple therapy of non-interferon immunomodulators leading to sort of 98% reduction in viral load and getting rid of HCV. And that's also led to a really interesting ethical issue, because although we've all had these concerns about HIV antivirals being trialled in African countries and then not giving access to the people they were trialled on, it would appear the opposite's happening, or the direction is happening now. So a course of Hep C antiviral, this recent triple therapy, I think is about $90,000 in Australia. If you get someone you know in Bangladesh or an Indian country to go and get a prescription, you can get it for 900 Australian. And there's a big industry, and it's just reached the media in Australia recently about at least Australians heading over to India and other countries to get cheap antivirals. So I'm not sure if many of us saw that coming. Hollywood, what has it taught us? It knows everything. So there are a heap of viral outbreak movies. Some are good, some aren't so good. But I don't think they have faith in our ability to produce an antiviral that's going to save the world, because all these ones that made millions had some. If you saw Contagion, it was very cleverly done. It had a whole team of WHO, CDC, infectious disease experts advise them on how to make the movie and how to make their statistics and get it right. They all relied on vaccines, so I don't think Hollywood has faith in us. Is there anything in the pipeline? Ebola, there certainly is, and some of you might have followed the debate. ZMapp was the secret serum that was referred to in the media. 3 chimeric antibodies that come together made from patients who'd survive, and there was a huge ethical debate about should we be just giving it to everyone with Ebola, and perhaps the ethical debate is the most interesting bit of this. Should we be conducting trials? How do you respond quickly to viral outbreaks and trials? And then there's some other traditional nucleoside analog type ones. There's some Chinese and Russian sort of Cold War of antivirals where they're trialling antivirals they say that will be effective against all viruses, which sounds a bit too good to be true. And we're waiting. So my last slide, and I haven't had the bell, so that's good, is how to survive the apocalypse. So if you're infected, just hope for supportive care. We've seen, and you've probably read some of the articles, particularly around Ebola, about how supportive care reduced mortality from 60 to 80% down to sort of 25%, so it works. Hope that someone invents an antiviral very quickly. That will help you. Hope that you don't get a post-viral syndrome, and again, the Ebola, that's described, but there are a lot of other viruses through history where post-viral syndromes have been described. That's the physical syndrome. You may also be aware that there's a cultural problem that faces Ebola survivors in West Africa, that they're seen as different and dirty and unclean, and there was a lot of resistance to reintegrating survivors back into their communities, so they end up isolated. Try not to infect anyone else, and if you can get through the first 4 steps, you're immune and you're laughing, it'll never bother you again. If you're not infected, try your best to stay in that group. Wait until there's a vaccine, and then I think you probably have an ethical obligation to look after the infected. And again, there's been some really interesting issues ethically about how do you get a workforce to turn up during a pandemic outbreak that puts their life at risk, and can you make people do it, or will they volunteer to do it? Thank you.